Resourceful Designer, episode 68. Don't take advantage of your design clients.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer Podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host. He's an orange belt in karate. Wait, is that supposed to impress us? Mark DeCote.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm happy you've been able to join me today as I discuss an issue of concern when it comes to charging your clients. Now, before I get to today's topic, I just want to share a little bit of what's been happening with me. I don't know if you hear the echo or not. I just had my office repainted, and right now everything is off the walls, all my decorations, the paintings, my shelves, and everything is out of here. So there's a little bit of an echo in the room. You might be hearing it. I don't know if it comes through on the podcast or not, but I definitely hear it. But hopefully within the next couple of days, I'll start putting stuff back. I just wanted to give the paint enough time to dry. So that's nice. And the other bonus thing is I don't know if you've listened to the podcast before, you might have heard me say how I keep a messy desk. It's just who I am. My desk is usually messy. Well, for the first time in a long time, because of this, my desk is actually pretty clean. So what I think I'm going to do is once I get a few things up in the office, I might actually take some photos before it gets dirty again, and I'll post them in the Facebook group so you guys can actually see my workstation. Now, I'll keep my fingers crossed that I can do this before I actually start messing it up again, because I tell you, I don't know how I do it. It's just one day I turn around and it's like, hey, my desk is messy, and I don't remember putting anything on it. But I've always been that way, as I've mentioned before. So that's what's new in my design life, and I hope everything's going well with yours. Now, before I get into today's main topic, I want to share a tip of the week with you. And this week's tip comes from a conversation that we had in the Resourceful Designer Facebook group, which if you're not a member of, you can join by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/group. And in it, there was a conversation about wrist pain, which is something that is very common amongst designers. We're constantly using a mouse or a keyboard or any tablet or that. And it's very possible carpal tunnel is something very predominant in the design industry. Wrist pain, even if it doesn't come to the actual carpal tunnel, which might require surgery and everything, it is a concern to think of, especially as we get older and we're doing it over and over again. Well, I just wanted to share something with you about this. Now, many years ago, back when I was working at the print shop, I was getting a lot of wrist pain to the point where I went to see a doctor about it, because if I started typing anything, and back then I was doing a lot more typing than I do now, but whenever I'd start typing, it would only take a couple of minutes for the pain to start shooting up and down my wrists. Now, one solution I did find, which did help a lot, is I did replace my mouse at the time with a trackball. Now, a lot of people, especially in the Facebook group in this conversation, were saying, if you go to a pen and tablet, that works out very well. I've never really used a pen and tablet that much, only for minor things. But I can tell you that when I switched from a mouse to a trackball, that helped a lot, because you're not moving your wrist around and rotating it too much. You can leave it in one space. There was a nice pad that I had to rest my wrist on, and it's just the fingers that were rolling the ball and my thumb was hitting the button. And I probably used that for 1.5 to 2 years before something happened to it. It broke and I had to go back to a mouse. And I've never gone back to a trackball. I'd like to. It was a lot of fun. It didn't take long for me to get used to it. A lot quicker than I thought. It only took a couple of days for me to actually get proficient. And actually some stuff I really like doing with it, close cropping or doing some fine touch-ups in Photoshop. It was so easy to do it with the ball, a lot easier than I find doing it with the mouse. But that was just one trick that did help my wrists out. But the main thing that helped was when I went to see the doctor, and this was a doctor because we were thinking that I might have to have my wrists operated on. And he told me to try something, and that was to angle my keyboard so that the top of the keyboard, the side with the number keys, was actually lower than the side with the space bar. So the keyboard would be angled downwards at the top. And I was lucky enough that my desk, the keyboard tray on my desk, allowed you to adjust it in different ways. And I was able to adjust it so that, as I said, the keyboard was angled downwards at the top. And what this did was it changed the angle of my wrists whenever I was typing to a more natural position where they were straighter. And overnight, I started finding that I was able to type more without feeling any pain in the wrists. And within a couple of weeks, My symptoms were completely gone. And to this day, I always angle my keyboard that way because I can type now for hours. And the other thing is, not only did it improve my wrists, I actually became faster typing because of the angle. My wrists were at a more comfortable angle and it just felt more natural. And that was something my doctor had told me, and I've been using it ever since. So if you suffer from wrist pain at any point and you do a lot of typing, try it if your keyboard tray allows you to angle it downward. As I said, the top of the keyboard has to be lower than the bottom of the keyboard. If it allows you to do that, give that a try and see. You might have to adjust the keyboard up or down till you get a nice comfortable angle so that your arms and wrists are straight and your wrists are not curved backwards. But it does make a huge, huge difference. As I said, I went to a point where we were contemplating having to do surgery to changing the keyboard angle. And within, I'd say a couple of months, I was symptom free altogether, and I've never had it back again. So that's this week's tip of the week. If you suffer from wrist pain, try angling your keyboard so that the number keys are lower than the space bar and see if that helps you. And now onto our main topic. Don't take advantage of your design clients. Now, I want to start off this episode a little bit differently and share a joke that I heard recently. A young boy enters a barber shop, and the barber whispers to his customer, "This is the dumbest kid in the world. Watch while I prove it to you." So the barber pulls out an old crumpled dollar bill and puts it in one hand and two brand new shiny quarters in the other. And then he calls the boy over and asks, "Which do you want, son?" The boy takes the two shiny quarters, thanks the barber, and leaves. "What did I tell you?" The barber laughs. "The kid never learns." Later, when the customer leaves, he sees the same young boy coming out of an ice cream store. "Hey, son, may I ask you a question? Why'd you take the two quarters instead of the dollar bill?" The boy licked his ice cream cone and replied, "Because the day I take the dollar is the day the game is over." Now, I heard that joke the other day, and it got me thinking that the moral of this story can be applied to our design businesses. Now, I've talked about pricing strategies for your design business before, back in episode 11, as well as how raising your prices can actually attract more design work in episode 26. But the one thing I haven't talked about before is the ability that we have to take advantage of our clients through our pricing. We work in an industry, the design industry, that doesn't have any sort of fixed pricing. Someone could literally pay $5 for a logo, and some other company can pay $50,000 for a logo. We've seen it happen both ways. And paying more doesn't necessarily mean you're getting a better product for your money. Now, with this range available to us, from low cost to high cost, it could be very tempting to take advantage of our clients for a few extra dollars here and there. It would be so easy to pad your time if you're charging by the hour. After all, your client doesn't know how long you actually spend on their project. So what does it matter if you put 10 hours if it only took you 8? They'll never know. And if you bill by the project, you can easily pad that price a bit to put in some extra dough and build your bank account. I've seen it happen before. I've seen designers boast about it. They get greedy because if it works once, if they're able to get some extra money out of the client one time, they'll try upping it the next time to get even more. But just like the kid in that joke, if you take more money for your services than what they really merit, the game could soon be over for you. I've seen that happen as well, unfortunately, where designers have priced themselves out of the market. In fact, a couple of my clients are with me for that exact reason. Their previous designer got greedy and started charging much higher rates, much higher than what he deserved, in my opinion, much higher than what his experience and his talents merited. And in the process, he ended up losing clients. Now, I'm not saying you're not worth the rates that you're charging. In fact, to be honest, most designers I talk to, I don't think they're charging enough for what they offer. What I'm saying is, whatever your rates are, stick to them and don't try to game the system in order to get more money than what you deserve. And this applies to all levels of business. I know some designers out there who won't take on any design project that's under $5,000. And that's fine. There is a market for that level of work. And if you have the skill and the capability to attract those clients, more power to you. But the same rules apply to them as to those designers who do the less expensive work. If they charge $10,000 for a corporate website that's only worth $7,000, it could come back to bite them. Now, this doesn't only apply to costs. Its same thing can go for services and features. There's a term that started many, many years ago in the restaurant industry, and the term has migrated to all businesses, and that's called the upsell. If you've ever been asked if you'd like to turn your meal order into a combo, that's an upsell. They're trying to persuade you to purchase something that sounds like a great deal. Man, I can get a fry and a drink for an extra $1. What a bargain. I'd be crazy not to take that deal. So you give them an extra $1. Well, what they did was they got you to spend an extra $1, money you weren't planning on spending to begin with, on something that only cost them, 20, 30 cents? So they made some extra profit by convincing you to purchase something you had no intention to purchase to begin with. Now, the same thing applies to your business. If a client calls you up because they need a simple website, a website that should cost $500, don't try to sell them a $1,000 website full of features that they don't really need. Again, I'm not saying that upselling is wrong, providing what you add is of value to the client, because there are times when the clients won't think of everything. In fact, most of the time, clients don't think of everything. That's part of what we do as designers. We offer solutions to their problems, even if they don't see the problem yet. We've been doing this long enough. We've helped enough clients that we start to see where people are lacking in things, their design and their websites and such, that we can pinpoint and suggest things that they don't see yet. But with that power of suggestion comes a responsibility, just like was told to Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. And that responsibility is to be true to your client and don't sell them on something that they don't need just for you to make an extra $1. There's a local web design company in my area, and I can tell you, they don't like me very much because I've stolen so many of their clients away from them. I didn't go out looking for the client. I didn't go out hunting them and stealing them away. Those clients came to me when they found out that they were being charged for services that they weren't even using. This web company was billing them for all sorts of services across the board. Every client paid for the same services, whether they were using it or not. And when the client is none the wiser, they're willing to pay. But once they did find out what was happening, they were also quick to leave. That web design company was taking the dollar bill instead of the 2 quarters. Now, there's a big difference between being greedy and charging an honest price, no matter how expensive it is. And clients are not that dumb. They will realize what's happening. They may be fooled for a bit, but not forever. And once they feel that they're being taken advantage of, the game's over and they'll take their business elsewhere. And that's what I'm talking about today. If you get greedy and start charging more for your work, offering more services than what your client needs, and just overall charging more than what it's worth, the game will be over for you as well. And that's all I wanted to talk about today. Now, have you ever seen a situation like this? Have you ever dealt with a greedy business that you know is trying to take advantage of you? I'd love to hear about it. Leave me a comment for this episode by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 68. And now this week's question of the week. This week's question comes from Michael. Michael wrote, says, I've been a professional graphic designer for 8 years this August, but I'm just now transitioning from general graphic design to doing mostly web design. What are some resources you can recommend for an easier wireframing and design mockup process? I'm aware of a couple applications like Sketch and Adobe XD. Have you had any experience with either of those? And if so, what are your experiences been thus far? Love the podcast and look forward to every episode. Well, thank you for the question, Michael. And Michael, to be honest, I don't use any of those programs for wireframing. I like the good old trusted pencil and paper. When I'm trying to come up with something, I will doodle it out, sketch it on a piece of paper, whether it's in my pad or on a scrap piece of paper and such. And if I really need to do something online or digitally, I will simply just do it in Photoshop. I can tell you when I first started doing web design, I was mocking things out in Illustrator. It was so easy to just draw boxes here and there's where the buttons are going to go and build the website. But then I would have to bring it all over into Photoshop and rebuild it from there, from scratch. and then slice it up and bring it out and do the code and whatever needed to be done. So eventually I kind of gave way and let the Illustrator side go and started building everything in Photoshop. Or not just building, but if I was doing like a mock-up or a wireframe, which wireframing is another word that I've never really used. To me, it's always a website mock-up. I've never called it a wireframe, even though that's the new term, I guess. Call me an old timer, but it's not a term we used to use. But yeah, if I was to say what application I use, it would be Photoshop. It's very easy to throw in the boxes, throw in buttons. And the great thing about Photoshop is if you like what you see, it's so easy to finalize it and then you have your artwork ready, as opposed to another application where you build the whole thing, figure out what you want it to look like, and then you have to rebuild it somewhere. If you want the buttons or background or any special elements done, you have to redo it. If you're already building it in Photoshop and it turns out being exactly what you want, most of the work's already done and you might have to just fine tune it. So I'm afraid that might not be the answer you're looking for. Now, I will tell you that besides Sketch and Illustrator and Photoshop, there is some software out there called Azure. I believe that's how you pronounce it. It's AXURE at azure.com, which is made for prototyping and wireframing websites and apps and that sort of thing. And I know a lot of people swear by it. I've heard some good things about it, but to me, the price, I forget, I looked it up briefly and it's like 20 some or 30 some dollars per month, which is more than I want to spend on something like that when I can do it just as easily on a sheet of paper or in Photoshop. Because again, just like I mentioned last week about the mood board and how mood boards, even though I don't call them that, is something I usually do for myself. It's not something I share with the client. The quote unquote wireframing is, again, not something I usually share with the clients. I used to, when I first started off, I would do them in Photoshop. I would practically design the entire website in Photoshop, get the client to sign off on it before I would start hand coding the website. But these days with WordPress and that, I will actually build a single page. It's faster to build a single page website, get the client to sign off on that before building all the additional pages on the site. And if the client likes it, that page is already done. So that's my way of making it. I know it's very different. Some other designers have a lot of different methods to it. And I wish I could have been a more help to you, Michael. But in my honest opinion, Photoshop and Illustrator are the perfect tools for doing this sort of thing. But your miles may vary. So thank you very much. I appreciate the question, Michael. Now, if you would like to submit a question for the podcast, once again, my mailbag is empty. Michael was the only one that sent a question out. I asked last episode for more questions. Well, Michael sent a question in and he got it answered right away. So if you have a question you'd like me to answer regarding anything about running a graphic design business, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback and send me your question. I would love to answer it. Now, before I go, I want to share another great iTunes review I received, a 5-star review from designer and programmer from the USA, titled Very Much Needed Podcast. Very informative podcast. It's not about design itself, but about the business side of design. I find it kind of hard to get into the design community. I don't understand why, at least that's my experience. Mark is sharing all kinds of useful resources, best practices, do's and don'ts. Thanks a lot, Mark, for this big service to the design community. Well, thank you very much for that lovely 5-star review. I love getting these things and I love sharing them with you. It makes me realize that what I'm doing on this podcast is making a difference, and I do appreciate it. Now, something I haven't shared with you in a little while is my 4-week marketing boost, a simple guide with 20 easy steps that take no more than 30 minutes to do, so you can dedicate 30 minutes per day over the course of 4 weeks to improve your self-image for your business in order to create the best first impression you can, so that when new potential clients discover you, they will be that much more impressed. Now, if you would like to get your copy of this free guide, simply visit marketingboost.net and sign up there. Or if you are in the USA, text Marketing Boost, all one word, to 44222, and the guide will be emailed to you. Now, that only works in the USA. The Marketing Boost text to 44222, where marketingboost.net is available worldwide. So that's it for this week's episode of the podcast. Short and sweet this week, but there was no more to talk about. I got to my point, said what I wanted to say, and now I'm going to get back to designing. Once again, if you'd like to follow me and all the others in the Facebook group, we now have over 200 members in there, sharing and talking about running their graphic design business. It's a great community. I love the people in there. Some really good insight and good advice that's being given out, not just by me, but by everybody in there. If that's something that interests you, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/group and then ask to join, and I will let you in. You can also follow me on Twitter at resourcefuld. There is a Facebook page at facebook.com/resourcefuldesigner, and you can always pin my pins or whatever they are on Pinterest at pinterest.com/resourcefuld. Until next time, I am Mark Decote, wishing you all the best in your graphic design business, and as always, reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer Podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.